Hi everyone and welcome to this webinar. My name's AJ, I'm on the webinar team here at AppDynamics, and today I'm excited to be joined by my colleagues as well as a special guest from the market research firm IDC to talk about the state of application security today and how to reduce security risks while accelerating application delivery. We're going to start with IDC's research on this and then go into a conversation with Stephen about the challenges around application security and what those mean for IT and the enterprise. And then finally, we'll go into a demo of our solution, Cisco Secure Application, and how it can help solve those challenges by protecting your applications at runtime. So we have a lot to get into today, but before we do, I just have to share this safe harbor statement, and I'll quickly call out a few other housekeeping items as well. So firstly, note that the console you're looking at is customizable, so you can resize the windows and feel free to explore the other widgets in that bar at the bottom of your screen. And if you have any video or audio issues, try refreshing your browser or closing any unnecessary browser tabs to conserve your bandwidth. But if you're still experiencing any issues, do reach out to us through the Q&A widget and we'll try to help you out. And this session will be available to watch on demand later, but for those of you watching this live, we will be leaving a few minutes at the end for a Q&A. So if you have any other questions for us, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box and we'll get to them at the end. All right, so without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce our speakers. So we have Stephen Elliot, who manages multiple programs at IDC and advises senior IT, business, and investment executives globally in driving the execution of digital transformation and business growth. And he authored the report that we'll be referencing today, so we'll be getting insights from a first-hand source, which is great. We have Gregg Ostrowski, who is a senior executive and thought leader with over 25 years experience in leadership positions for technology companies, working with many Fortune 1000 customers on digital transformation, DevOps strategies, and much more. And we have Sunsharay Chestnut, who is our go-to expert on all things application performance monitoring, network monitoring, and application security. He has over 8 years of experience solving customer problems and educating them on the value of full-stack observability. So we're in great hands. And with that, I'll kick it over to you first, Stephen.
Great. Thank you. And it's great to be here. Let's dig right into this because it's quite a hot topic within IT organizations as they transform how they operate through DevOps and agile organizational constructs and principles, the theme of observability and full stack visibility. And then certainly now we're seeing this wave of how do I transform security capabilities by taking advantage of all the great performance data that these organizations collect. Now, one of the things that's been fascinating as we've worked through this topic is the realization that many organizations are driving multiple layers of value. And what you see here are just a lot of words around some of the hot button issues and investment themes moving from proactive to predictive monitoring. Looking at, how do you define security through code scanning or vulnerability detection or threat detection? A lot of the use of automation and really thinking about how is automation applied across operational disciplines as well as development and security disciplines. And then, of course, the real theme is this is about a great customer experience, right? This is about driving a more secure posture while at the same time increasing the collaboration of your teams through great technology integrations as well as through thoughtful planning of how organizations are using DevOps principles and observability to really think about modernization of IT operations, modernization of application deployment models, and then, of course, really looking at how are ways they can drive more efficient and effective security posture moving forward. Now, what we're going to look at here is some recent research we did, and what's been fascinating is just sort of seeing what outcomes from 160 organizations here. In this first slide, what you see is a set of answers where we asked the question to support accelerated application delivery. Which of the following areas where your organization likely invest to improve over the next 2 years. And it's fascinating in that you see these first two top answers. Almost 54% said DevOps processes and governance, monitoring management, and security testing. So yeah, this really validates a lot of use cases that we're seeing with regards to bringing together the idea of how do we improve team collaboration across development, operations, and security, as well as what are the areas of investment around security we should be making moving forward. And of course, here at the bottom, another thing that really struck us was 30% of the respondents said code quality and security reviews. So this wave that's coming in really thinking about how to transform security mechanisms while reusing some of the investments you've already made in terms of performance observability data and, of course, security mechanisms that you have in place. Now, we also asked, what are the biggest challenges with regards to adoption of cloud-native application development? Again, another hot button issue with cloud-native, and what you see here is 30% of the respondents said enforcing security and operations observability. And again, we're seeing a lot of organizations think about what observability means, but also what security means to them as they deploy these modern performance architectures, and they really rethink the role of operational management. They rethink the role of automating CI/CD and DevOps practices. And then, of course, bringing into the definition of what security means to them as they go through these discussions to drive more efficiencies and operational cadence. In the same survey, we asked about top technology bottlenecks in application delivery. And we find that a lot of organizations love this data because they put it into their use cases, their business cases to drive, and validate some of their thinking. And what we found here in terms of top bottlenecks with regards to application delivery pipelines, again, security, compliance, and governance came up almost 46% of the time. And of course, monitoring and performance management came up almost 44%. So many of you are going through monetization investments and really thinking about legacy applications, cloud-native applications, and the role of observability, DevOps, and security mechanisms. No doubt that these are common themes, and we've quantified some of the results here with regards to bottlenecks and other challenges. Now, in addition, another top area to accelerate application delivery, and these are investments that companies are planning to do over the next 12 months here. Security integration, almost 29% of the time, is getting a larger percentage of budget allocation moving forward. Now, of course, in a lot of these discussions, open source plays a role, a plethora of multi-cloud architectures, lots of different application architectures, so a lot of complexity is increasing. And that goes without saying that your organizational constructs, the ownership of these tasks, continues to be a hot button issue. So, the net of it is that you've got a great opportunity to not only transform observability and you utilize DevOps practices and models around automation, but also really to think about, what's the role of security, how do you define security, and what are the opportunities for integration and data sharing of that information across teams. And finally, collaboration of these teams, security, DevOps, operations. It's becoming more and more of a need to have, not a nice to have, but really a requirement as the complexity increases and the number of components that you need to observe and manage increases. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to AJ, and we'll continue the discussion on this very important topic.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, that was some really great information and hot off the press, I believe. So you heard it here first. And just a reminder to everyone that if you have any questions about any of this, please drop them in the Q&A box at any time and we'll get to them at the end. But in the meantime, Gregg, I'll come to you now to lead us in a discussion around what Stephen's insights mean for IT and the business.
Sounds good. Thank you, AJ. And that was fantastic information there, Stephen. Thank you for presenting that. A couple things to think about too. We all know that application delivery is accelerating beyond, any of our wildest expectations that we've seen over the last couple of years. And with IT running in a way that's been, historically siloed. When you have technology solutions that help in some of these emerging challenges that are popping up, there's also the piece around people and process. So can you talk a little bit about, what changes in the mindset and the culture that are required to make this whole cohesiveness between the application teams and the security teams to make that move forward in a meaningful discussion? And then secondly, if you kind of think about it from another way, how do you incentivize the security and operations team to be able to collaborate and communicate directly?
Yeah, no, there's great questions, Greg. I think there's two big considerations. First and foremost, many of these organizations are thinking about, more and more, what's the role of security transformation as they rethink development processes, the use of automation for CI/CD capabilities, and automated feedback mechanisms for customer experience improvements. And then, of course, the role of operations as these operations teams think about becoming a service bureau and providing the critical performance data to multiple constituents and teams across the organization. Now, we've seen a lot of organizations think about it's not just about the data collection, but data sharing, right? Sharing across infrastructure platform, cloud architects, sharing across DevOps teams, and certainly increasingly security teams. And so we're finding that organizations are going through this natural next stage of evolution where they've been through Agile organizationally. Now they've adopted DevOps for different workloads. And now they're saying, hey, let's add a security flavor or layer to the conversation and think about how we can reuse all the investments we've made to create that foundation for modern IT operations and modern security practices. And so, first and foremost, it's a combination of people, processes, and certainly technologies, but also it's a mindset around collaboration, teamwork, and data collection and sharing. I would say the other piece of it, too, is really around, the ability to have tremendous amounts of data in context for different folks, right? Security teams need certain information from a performance standpoint, but in the context that they really utilize it and take advantage of it. The same is true for DevOps teams, application support teams, and certainly IT operations and SREs. So we're finding that the ability to have this data in context, and it goes well beyond just dashboards, right? You've got to think about vulnerability as it relates to security and performance. You've got to think about a customer experience and tying it back to what impact is the business experiencing for those particular services. So the use of analytics has become really, really critical, and the ability to really share that data in context with different teams, with different users across the organization, and to really understand, hey, look, this is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight, but the more that you're proactively planning for these types of innovation opportunities, the more effective you can be in deploying them.
Yeah, for sure. So just to add on to that, do you think this is something that's driven from a top-down approach where the executives are mandating or driving the process? Do you think just by being able to share this context and this contextual data between different teams is what's going to help, or is it a combination of both?
Yeah, we've seen organizations really look at it from, director level, team levels that are using these tools, realizing, hey, we've got an opportunity to improve a security posture. Now, let's face it, there are a lot of folks in operations and development that are not security experts, and that's okay. But a lot of times, these teams, inclusive of security, we all want to have a compliant architecture. We want to have audit and tracing capabilities. So the outcomes are very consistent, regardless of the teams that are involved in the conversations. So there's a good set of common outcomes that all the teams want to achieve. What we've seen are teams really think about, hey, look, if we're going to automate CI/CD or app releases, we're going to think about new modern application architectures. Then why don't we think about how security mechanisms can support, a repeatable common outcome around, better vulnerability posture, a better compliance set of, reports, and even, a traceable set of audit capabilities that can be embedded, earlier in the application development cycle. So we've seen, those types of teams really get aggressive about, working each other and recognizing, where the expertise really resides. And then we've seen senior executives who realize, geez, complexity is increasing. So our security posture and our ability to execute that really has to increase. So how do we embed this idea across the teams?
Yeah, gotcha. So it's really a combination of both, right? If you have the data, you might also share it and help people collaborate. And also your research shows, and this is something that we also feel that we see a lot within our customer rollouts and digital transformation efforts, that when they start looking at pursuing that application security in their overall process for all the digital services. I mean, we all know that, if you have a security flaw, that is like one of the worst things you can do to your end users when you want to try to provide the best user experience as possible. So you start thinking procedurally, how do you think, or where do you feel that you should start the process of integrating those security mechanisms earlier within the software development lifecycle? And maybe even if you have some best practices about how to automate that or how to optimize that.
Yeah, there's a couple areas where we've seen some commonality there in terms of getting started. One, which it was really more about human behavior. You an operations team or SRE or even a development team, go and seek out your SOC. Go see who's leading different projects around vulnerability, around application scanning. We've seen a lot of organizations just start the conversation about, hey, are there solutions? Are there API libraries? Are there data sources that we can reuse or take advantage of? And just have an honest, open conversation around, what exists today and what are the common sort of outcomes that we can all reside around and focus on to drive, a better outcome. The second piece we've seen are, the use of automation increasingly across, whether it's operations and the collection of information and finding, applying different analytic models to solving problems and identifying them faster. We've also seen the use of automation with regards to moving from manual to automated app testing. We've seen it with regards to CI/CD and pipeline delivery. And then, of course, across security, increasingly high levels of automation for, SIEM and other related capabilities. So, this theme of automation really, it's a horizontal theme, not vertical. And it's a great way to have a conversation with different teams across development, security, and ops to say, hey, what are some commonality opportunities that we can all work around and think about, putting a plan in place and driving, execution for, a win-win across the board. I would say the final piece is really, business resiliency has been a huge topic for everyone. Right. So it's been really, really critical that as companies think about what their business resiliency strategies, which are often tied to security, practices and investments, how do modern application deployments, modern application architectures and modern operations, they need to be a part of that discussion. And so, just by having those conversations when a company is thinking about what their business resiliency strategy is, has really driven a lot of opportunities for collaboration, a lot of opportunities for tool rollouts and efficiencies around process and the use of automation. And then finally, just a higher level of awareness and acceptance of different folks' roles and an ability to have honest, trusting conversations in terms of, look, no one's looking to infringe on someone's ownership, but great ways to drive operational efficiencies moving forward as more and more of these conversations take hold.
Yeah, that's a key part about you're not trying to infringe on somebody's ownership, because I hear that a lot. This is the way we do it. This is my domain, but opening up and collaborating is really critical at this point. So this is really why we came out with the Secure Application product. It's really about driving that means of helping the development teams and the security teams collaborate, but also giving enterprises that means of comfort that you can start to proactively and in near real time be able to detect these threats and act upon them. But the one key part that we feel is also very important is the ability of kind of correlating the security threats and analysis and performance to the business context, because we feel that that's a way of giving the IT professionals a leg up where to prioritize. Can you give a little bit of your insights of how you see the value of understanding the performance correlated to the business relationship?
Yes, yeah, it's a great observation because we're seeing in IT organizations this whole theme around, well, so what? What's it mean to my business? What's it mean to my application performance? What's it mean to my customer experience? Is my net promoter score going up because our digital service delivery has improved? We're finding that certain line of business managers are becoming more active in the conversations around, what are the business metrics that are driving, their results that they're, really responsible for. So, for example, many marketing executives want to know, hey, how's my website performing? What's the experience of the customers, regardless of where they are? And then certainly, how are they thinking about, secure transactions? How, are they going through the process of execution of a revenue generating transaction? So there's a lot of things that, line of business folks are driving with regards to, can you get me the information? What does the performance, the security of the services mean for my customer? And do they trust us, right? Do they trust us in terms of delivering a great experience, but ones that it's secure and one that we're going to maintain a high level of security standards for, their experience as they engage with us. So we're finding that a lot of these conversations are more and more starting with, well, what are the business KPIs? What are the critical success factors for that business manager who has, or application owner, who's got, ownership responsibilities of these services or products? And then, starting with those, how do we sort of think about observability? How do we think about improving security? How do we think about team collaboration and process automation? So a lot of things that go into that, but it's, increasingly starting with, what's the business context? What are the business metrics that really matter for that customer experience with this particular product or service?
Thank you, Stephen. That was a great conversation and a lot of very valuable information. We made generally available March 30th the Cisco Secure Application, which is a way of giving our customers that really easy way of having their security teams work and collaborate with their application development teams. So if you kind of think about it from the aspect of sharing data and sharing information, the security team will now have that application awareness or context of the security threats, and the application team will be able to pull that security information in so that they can see quickly where the vulnerability and the threat is, quickly act upon it. But we take that even a step further. So we even make it so that it'll automatically notify you, and you can even block the application that's causing the issue so that you're not exposing yourself to a longer threat or a longer challenge. But what I'd like to do now is I'd like to bring on Sunsharay Chestnut to give us a demo of the Secure Application product.
Thanks, Greg.
As part of AppDynamics' broader business observability strategy, we've extended our monitoring into application security. This enables our customers to detect real-time security threats and provides a way to mitigate them before they're being exploited. In today's demo, I'm going to show you how we're able to accomplish this with AppDynamics and Cisco Secure Application. I'm starting here in the AppDynamics controller at our application dashboard, our control center for monitoring everything within our application, AD Financial. This is our application flow map, an automatically discovered, real-time visualization of all the components that make up our application. As an AppOps person, I live in this view for day-to-day monitoring, and it provides a full stack view into the health of my application. Secure Application is embedded directly into the lightweight agents used to build out this view. This means we're already deployed throughout the environment and living in the application runtime. Notice on the right here, there's a new Security Events tab where we've identified 6 critical security issues. Since AD Financial is a customer-facing platform, we're going to take a deeper look at this as soon as possible. When we drill into the Events tab, we're presented with the Secure Application UI, which lists all the vulnerabilities that's impacting our application. Traditionally, security teams scan for vulnerabilities in pre-production environments and send their findings to the app teams with little to no context on where exactly it needs to be fixed. This results in a labor-intensive process where now the app teams have to translate these findings to determine where exactly in the code the vulnerability lives, and then map it back to a particular service. As Gregg mentioned, the solution to security challenges is aligning people, processes, and technology. That's exactly what Secure Application helps us do. With the analysis we're providing, not only does the AppOps and SecOps team have access to real-time production vulnerability scanning, we're using the data from AppDynamics to map this vulnerability to the affected application and the impacted services. For instance, this vulnerability was found on our AD Financial app, and we're specifying the services where this vulnerability was found. Now, this enables the team to do two things. One, quickly triage without having to sift through multiple systems or logs. And two, prioritize the criticality of the fix based on what's being impacted. If this is a backend service that's inaccessible to the public, we know this isn't something that needs to be urgently addressed. Now, if it's a payment processing service, like in this example, we know this is critical to the business and could potentially expose sensitive data. So we want to address this before there's a security breach. This view lists all the vulnerabilities in our environment, whether they're being actively exploited or not. But notice that one of these critical vulnerabilities here looks a little bit different, indicated by these two icons. This tells us that not only are we seeing this being exploited in other customers' environments, we're also seeing this vulnerability being actively exploited within our own application. When it comes to security breaches, time is of the essence, so let's see how quickly we can work to remediate this. As I drill in further, I can begin to understand how this particular exploit weakened my application. This allows rogue actors to execute arbitrary commands remotely, and it potentially grants them access to data on our system. Right away, we can understand when this vulnerability was first detected and what are those remediation steps necessary to mitigate any risks. So now that we understand what the vulnerability was, what application and instances are being targeting, we can work with the SecOps team and take a deeper look into how it's being exploited. Here is where some of the real analysis begins. Our first focus is on answering a couple different questions about the attack, such as where did the attack originate from? Was there any sensitive data that was accessed? Was any malicious code executed on our system? Finding the answer to these questions can typically take months, and sometimes the full scope and brevity of the attack is never identified. In this view, we can help easily answer some of those questions. On the left here, we're providing some context about the particular attack and the methodology that was used to detect it. We can also piece together if this was a sequence of attacks or if other areas of your environment were targeted as well. And the bottom right is one of the most powerful views on the screen. Since we're fully integrated into the application runtime, we're able to analyze how the attack was executed and provide a full stack trace of that attack down to the line of code, so your app team knows exactly where they need to go to remove the exploit. We're also able to see the exact commands that were executed, which helps us understand, was this just an initial rookie attack to confirm that they could access the system, or did something more sinister happen where sensitive data was potentially removed from the server? We've condensed all this information into one easily consumable view, so both the AppOps and SecOps team can speak a common language. This saves countless hours of analysis and allows us to start working on remediation right away. So now that we have the information we need, let's stop this attack from happening again before anything nefarious happens. With our customizable policies, we're able to move from simply detecting these issues to proactively blocking them, which buys us some time until the app team is able to get the fix into production. This brings us to our policy configuration screen. And when I take a look at the particular policy that was used to detect our attack, I can simply change it from detect to block, and in almost real time, this new policy is pushed out to our app environment with no need for redeployment or agent restarts. This means there's no downtime nor no visible impact on the business. Customers can still safely use our application. So now that we have the confidence that we're protected against the attack, our app teams can carefully work to update the code in the affected library. Now, let's go back over to the vulnerabilities view. Since we live in the application runtime, once that updated library has been pushed out to production, we can see that in real time, that vulnerability has been fixed. So within a few clicks, we've gone from detecting an attack, determining the scope and severity, blocking it from happening again, and providing remediation steps so the application team can fix it. The average business spends months and countless hours performing this sort of analysis. We just did it in real time and effectively mitigated it in the amount of time that it takes to make a cup of coffee. So now that we've covered the attacks, we want to address all the vulnerabilities that were detected before they're exploited. This dashboard here shows the libraries in our application that have vulnerabilities ranked by their severity. We've also identified the specific release of the library that will remediate any issues. As Stephen touched on earlier, businesses are focused heavily on leveraging open source software to accelerate application development. This opens up their application to additional risks if vulnerabilities are found in those third-party libraries. Since updating a library may require extensive code refactoring, this view here helps prioritize which library should be targeted first and which ones could potentially wait for future release. So let's quickly recap here. Cisco and AppDynamics have opened a new door when it comes to managing application security, and it allows AppOps and SecOps teams to speak a common language. The only security breach you want to think about is the one that never happened. Secure Application enables our customers to protect their brand, their customers' data, and minimize the time, effort, and cost associated with doing so. I hope you're as excited about our new product offering as we are. Greg, back over to you.
Well, that was fantastic, Sunsharay. That was an awesome demo. There's so much valuable content there. It's amazing what we were able to put in a product that's really so valuable to all of our customers. One area that I want to make sure that the folks listening on the call today really kind of understand is that the deployment of this is very simple. I heard you mention that in your demo. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Secure Application is embedded into AppDynamics agents version 21.3 or higher. This allows you to tap into your existing AppDynamics deployment and save time getting up and running. By simply updating to the latest agent and enabling a flag in the agent configuration, you'll have access to Secure Application and all its features. This is a big plus for SecOps and AppOps teams, as you don't need to maintain two separate products.
That is absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure a lot of folks will be happy to know that it's something that's easy to get out and running for their environment. But, you know, another key part here, and a lot of the session around Stephen's research talked about the application owners and the business leaders focusing on user experience. You know, user experience is like the nirvana everybody's looking forward to. You never want to have a bad user experience, otherwise you risk losing your customers. Do you feel that the business leaders and the app owners would also be beneficial to use a product like Secure Application?
Of course. With AppDynamics, we're focusing on providing true business observability, and Secure Application helps expand our ability to do so. From an app owner's perspective, before you actually want to move a new product feature to production, you want to have a true understanding of how secure the code is or the product or your app truly is. If there's some sort of vulnerability, what part of the product is that impacting, and how much of an impact is that going to have on the business? Similarly, business leaders such as the CISO want that same exact capability, the ability to correlate any real-time security threats with that business impact. Since we know the application context and now have that security visibility, this is a perfect tool for them to identify any risk and its effect on the business.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Sunsharay. The interesting piece here, in my opinion as well, is you have user experience so important, and a lot of times security is just assumed that it's in the application that you're using. The second you violate that trust of your user, the brand damage and the loss of business that you put at risk for not having a proper security solution in place is just really off the charts of what you can offer your customers. It's really a really interesting piece. But I appreciate the demo, love the feedback, love the dialogue. Thank you for Stephen, and I'd like to turn it back to AJ now to wrap us up.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Greg, and thanks, you guys. That was a great discussion, and I hope you all in the audience got a lot out of that. We'll be opening the floor for questions in just a few, but just to recap on what we've learned here today, I wanted to call out a few important points to reiterate here. So first, collaboration is key across security, operations, and development teams. It's key to these teams' ability to effectively manage applications, and that's critical to organization success today. And for those leading organizations, that increasingly means taking a proactive approach to security. With Cisco Secure Application, App and Sec teams can now leverage correlated performance and security insights early and often to minimize your organization's risk to your attack surface, your customer data, the business impact, all while keeping business objectives top of mind. And ultimately, that means you can thrive in today's digital environment because now you don't have to sacrifice velocity and scale for security. So that's all we have for you today before we turn it over for questions. But if you want to learn more, I encourage you to explore the resource list to the left of your screen there, where you'll find links to request another demo of Secure Application in the context of your own business challenges and use cases. And there's also a link there to the latest Technology Spotlight from IDC, which shares a lot of the information we talked about here. So that's for you to take away or to share with your team. And we'll be sharing the on-demand link to this session later today as well. So thank you all for joining us, and let's get into the Q&A.
All right, so we've had quite a few questions come in. We have about 5 to 10 minutes for the Q&A, so let's get right to it. And we're still accepting questions as well, so do feel free to type your question into the Q&A box at any time. Okay, so first question. Does Secure Application require AppDynamics APM? Greg, I'll come to you on this one.
Yeah, thanks, AJ. That's a great question. So the way that we've developed the Secure Application product is that it runs in the runtime of the application. So what that means is that it's built into the existing agent that gets deployed. So the short answer is yes, you do need to have AppDynamics APM installed as a starting point, and then the Secure Application component can just be an add-on to the existing application, to the existing agent that's already been deployed. So it's done in a very seamless way to take advantage of the Secure Application capabilities, but ultimately it requires AppDynamics APM as a starting point to take advantage of it.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question. Is AppDynamics able to drill down to specific objects in the SQL server that are being used, and by what reporting application? Greg?
Yeah, so this is a question that's really geared, and I'll answer it in two ways. One is it's really geared as part of the core capabilities of AppDynamics, and I actually just see that this question came in from Paul, and there's a follow-up on it, so I'll answer both. So we have the ability of running an agent that we refer to as Database Monitor, or DBMon, that sits outside of your databases, and it's able to to monitor your SQL database. Now, the beauty is when you first install AppDynamics, the first thing you get is a flow map of all the dependencies of that application, including the databases that are there. When you have a problem that arises, you can then drill down into that problem, down into the database, into the SQL environment, and then also identify the exact object that's causing the issue. So give you a little bit of a hypothetical use case that we've had. Actually, it's not hypothetical. It came up with a customer. They had a table set that had a very low limit on the size of the file that can be stored within that table. And AppDynamics was able to pinpoint that table item that was able to have such a low limit. We were able to identify that as being the blocker of the application. So the answer is yes, absolutely. Being able to monitor the database environment is something that's core to the AppDynamics product.
Great, thank you, and thanks for catching that follow-up as well.
Oh, you're welcome.
So we have another question. Yeah, so this person's asking, love to implement and explore, just want to check that a new license is also required or only Java agent upgrade is sufficient.
So yeah, so the way that we've designed this here is that it's basically an add-on to the existing Java agent. So what that means is you have the Java agent deployed in your AppDynamics console. In order to enable secure application, there's a license add-on that gets applied to be able to take advantage of secure applications. So it's a very easy way to take advantage of it, but yes, there is an add-on to it.
Awesome, thank you. Next question. Can AppDynamics only identify vulnerabilities in production or in lower regions as well?
Well, the way that, yeah, sure. The way that we look at this here is that, AppDynamics is our core function is to be able to provide that performance analytics of your application that's running in production. And the reason why, or the way we see this is that there was a void with being able to monitor applications in real time for security threats and to be able to act upon them. So what we do is we monitor for vulnerabilities in production so that you have a way of automating the response. And by means of that is you have the option of detecting a threat automatically, and then you have the ability of setting policies that will either just notify you that there's a vulnerability, or you have the option of going forward and blocking that vulnerability. The other piece too is that when we are running in your environment, we'll actually show you known vulnerabilities, even if they're not in your environment yet, so that you know that they're out there and applicable. But when it's in your environment, that's when you can start to take action. So you can be proactive, and you can also be automated based on the way that the agents are configured and deployed.
Cool, thank you. That's a really helpful answer. Okay, next question. Does AppDynamics have visibility of encrypted traffic?
So this is something that's going to be looking at encrypted traffic. This is going to be looking at threats and vulnerabilities within the application stack that you have. So it's not necessarily a tool that we're using to look at encrypted traffic. It's running in the runtime of the application. So it's a slightly different use case for that particular question.
Cool, thank you. And we have another follow-up question from this person, Devaraj. Thank you for your questions. How does AppDynamics differ from RASP? RASP.
Well, yeah. So what we're doing here is, because we're running in the runtime of the application. So from RASP is basically runtime application self-protection, which is effectively a similar means, but because we're in the runtime of the application, we're actually monitoring at the application level. So that's the big differentiator with us in the AppD side from a secure app point of view. Where RASP would be something that you plug into your DevOps cycle or your CI/CD cycle prior to going into production.
Great. Okay, next question. Is it also working with NetAgent? Thank you.
So the question from Adala that came through is it working with the .NET agent? So our release, we started with Java. So our initial release that we went GA on March 30th was based on our Java application. So we do have plans of supporting additional languages, including .NET, that you'll see coming out throughout the remainder of the year.
Perfect. Next question. If AppDynamics is sitting in the app as an agent once the threat hits apps, I'm not sure if I've read this right. Does that make sense to you, Gregg?
No, I think there's an additional context to that question that should be coming through.
Okay, yeah, Deborah, if you could, oh, yeah. What is the unique feature of AppDynamics? We'll wait. Yeah, Deborah, we'll wait for you to, maybe you hit enter too quickly there. We'll just move on to the next question for now. How does Secure Application block a threat?
So the solution is quite unique. So like I mentioned before, and this was talked to throughout the demo and through previous questions, is that we have the agent that's running in the runtime within our Java agent. The platform is integrated with content for your threat database through CVE content and what have you. So that way we have real-time, up-to-date information as what the known threats and vulnerabilities are out there. So once something comes up, once something pops up into the general market or general industry of a known threat, we're then able to correlate that with the applications that are running in the environment that are running secure applications. So the cool part here is that there's no need to configure secure app to be tied into a threat database. It's already done that for you, but we just correlate all that data together and present to you a way that the application owners will be able to see exactly what line of code is causing that threat. The security folks will be able to understand the threats and understand from a application point of view how that threat is affecting them from the security point of view. And then we also correlate that to the business so that the business sees how the impact is from a business point of view. So all three components are really how we start to enable collaboration amongst the three different teams. But ultimately, this is done by monitoring the application in runtime, the correlation of data in the back end, and then also being able to trigger the response based on policies that are defined by the administrator running the environment.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so we have that question through. Since AppDynamics senses the attack through app agents once the attack happens, my question is, do we have any proactive approach before the attack hits the application?
Yeah, so that's where I was going through the, how we integrate into the threat and vector database to be able to understand what's going on industry-wide. So we're able to then give you some proactive elements that are impacting, a specific version of Apache server that you may be running or some other components that you may be running in your environment that's potentially going to affect you. By doing so, it's a very simple way of seeing two different icons. One is, yes, it's in your environment. Two, yes, it's in your environment. That's going to take advantage of the policies that are set up and being driven. And the second piece is, this is happening in the environment. It's not in your environment yet, but it's happening in the industry. And just to take notice of it and take corrective action before it actually infiltrates your environment.
Excellent, thank you. I hope that makes sense to you, Deborah. Okay, so I think we have time for one more question. Where does Secure Application get the CVE data from?
So the nice part is that this was a project that was, that's a really valid question. It's a great question because at the end of the day, there's CVE content is basically the brains of the solution here. And for folks here that are maybe unfamiliar with CVE, that's common vulnerabilities and exposures. So being that we worked on this project jointly with the Cisco security group, we have access to a very large security business. So the database is something that we just had access to through the integration between AppDynamics and Cisco, and leveraging certain items that may be publicly available threats, as well as something that's been curated on our end. And then the nice part is that if threats are discovered, it's automatically updated into the database so that we can proactively inform, any users of secure application that there's a threat or potential threat in their environment. So there's, and the nice part, again, I mentioned this before, is that there's no need to configure anything to be able to get this to work from a CVE content or, the common vulnerabilities and exposures. It's all done for you based on the secure application rollout.
Cool. Thank you. All right. So looks like that's all we have time for today. Thank you, Gregg, for those thoughtful answers. And thank you to everyone who asked questions. It was really great to see this level of interest in the product. So yeah, we really appreciate it. To anyone whose question we didn't get to, I'll be following up with you shortly after this. And again, this session will be available to watch on demand, so we'll send that to everyone as well as soon as that's available. You'll get that in a follow-up email, and do feel free to reply to that directly if you have any other questions, either for Gregg or for Stephen. Okay, great. That's all from us for now. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.